And welcome back to Player Display. Today we're going to do something that's a little bit different, not quite a review, more so just a straight up list. This is going to be a list of my top 10 favorite Batman figures. I think Batman is the character that we reviewed the most on this channel, so as kind of a little memento of that, and also to commemorate the fact that we've reached 525 subscribers, which is wild, I just wanted to do a pretty informal little top 10 list of all my favorite Batman figures. That being said, there are some caveats here. First of all, almost every single figure in this list is modded in some way, shape, or form, so I'm not ranking these figures based on how they are out of the packaging. I'm ranking them based on how much I enjoy them in my collection as they stand, whether they're modded or not. So that's the first big piece of criteria I did want to mention. Second, if you are interested in any of the modded pieces I might have added to some of these figures, let me know in the comments and I can direct you to the initial video where we reviewed that figure, whether it would have been a short or a full-on review. And then when you go there, you should be able to just find a link in the description and that can direct you right to the straight-up goods. And third, a lot of these capes are actually custom made by myself, and I do have a tutorial on my channel if you wish to check that out as well, if you want to make capes of your very own. Very simple to do. I know it's a long tutorial, but once you learn how to do it, you should be able to make capes like that. Know what I mean? So anyhow, enough of that. Again, this is going to be very informal, so let's just go on and start with number 10. So in our 10th spot, not to say that this is a bad figure by any means, I just happen to love other Batmen more. This is the Batman from the Bat Family 5-pack, which is exclusive to Amazon. I think it's still available if you want it. But it was an absolutely excellent pack. I got it as a holiday gift. It included, of course, Batman, and then a whole bunch of members of the Bat Family. Obviously not all of them, but you got Batgirl, which is one of my favorites from the pack. You had Red Hood, you had Robin in there, Damian Wayne. It was just an excellent pack. And I also really love the Batman that they have. This is Reus. This is a figure that has been used on a number of occasions. Firstly with the Three Jokers Batman, and then they used him again for the JLA, where he was more blacked out. And I think this is the second time that they released it. This time he's got a blue and gray motif, which, now that I'm looking at the collection that I've got over here that we're reviewing today, it seems that I have a big preference towards having a ever so slightly blue Batman. But in this case, it's a lot more saturated, a lot more comic-y. That being said, the reason why I enjoy this Batman so much is, for me, he's like my, well, naturally, my Bat Family Batman. He's the dad man, if you will. This just feels like a Batman who's been through it. He's seen all his years. He's gone through all the critical events in the comics and in the movies. And then by this point, he's no longer doing all the crime fighting himself. Now he's sort of just sitting in the background, directing the rest of the Bat Family to do his bidding and get everything done. That being said, there are a whole bunch of mods in here as well. I believe I might have done some slight repainting on the logo. Maybe not. You notice right here, there's a little bit of paint mess up on the bat on top of the oval, so I might need to correct that. I think I attempted to correct it, but I didn't use a good enough paint, so it didn't stick and stay, so I'll need to do that. And like I mentioned before, as a precedent to this review over here, not really a review, again, it's a top 10, but I did give him a custom wired cape, which is awesome. Once more, I do have a tutorial on that. It is simply a combination of old clothing and double-sided tape and wire, very easy to do, but I really love the cape that I gave him. Before he had a solid cape, I am not a solid cape type of guy. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but for me, I really love the capes that just branch out. So you could do what I call the Keaton, where you can make them doing the flying out pose. So if you want like an Arkham Knight version of Batman that's kind of gliding down or whatever it is you want, then that's something you can do. So I really love wired capes, and I, for the most part, have been a very big fan of the stock wired capes that Todd has been providing lately. There have been a few losers in there, but overall, I think he's got a very good formula going on. I also gave this Batman a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow to make him seem a little bit more aged, a little bit unkept, I suppose, if you will. I also did paint in the trunks. The trunks were gray, like the rest of the main suit, but I painted those in. You can see there's a little bit of paint rub right there on that thigh, so, but I don't really care that much. And as for the basic aesthetics of this figure that I did not change up, I really love the gold oval. I think that's excellent. I really enjoy the bat belt. I think that's fantastic. And the boots are also pretty interesting. They got a lot of nice sculpted details in there. And speaking of sculpted details, I feel like this is a figure that doesn't go too far. He's not too heavily stylized. He doesn't have a whole ton of grooves in there or anything. So this is one of my favorite examples of a blue on gray Batman. I think it's a really great comic-y motif for him, but there are some examples that are just a little bit stronger on this list. We are at our 9th spot with the Detective Comics 27 Batman, and one thing I forgot to mention, almost every single figure on this list is McFarlane and 7-inch scale, so I wanted to mention that before we go any further. But that being said, this figure is somewhat infamous, and the reason why I've got it on this list at all is because I really love the initial debut appearance of Batman. That being said, though, this figure does have some issues and some great strengths, so it's kind of a mixed bag. That being said, now I think about it, maybe he should have been in the 10th spot, but ultimately I prefer this concept of a design over the Bat Family Batman that we just had a look at in blue. So, as I just mentioned, this is meant to embody the debut appearance, there goes the figure stand, of Batman, way back in the 40s, late 30s, I don't quite remember, excuse me there, but yeah, this is meant to embody when he first showed up in the comics, and he straight up killed a man, which I find really amusing. So they were still trying to feel around, figure out what Batman was supposed to be, and it's just a really interesting prototypical design. Even though mechanically he's not the most sound, I think it's really cool to look at this figure, the very basic details he has, and see what has continued throughout all other iterations of Batman from this point forward. Of course, he's got the trademark ears, he's got the logo, a very basic one, sure, but it's a very prototypical Bat logo embossed on the chest. He also got the Bat belt, a very early version of that, even the Bat diaper, the boots, the cape. I mean, it's got all the trademark elements of what a typical Batman should have. Of course, they're not always going to have these details, but even then, it's still the hallmark of what you expect a Batman to be. So even though this guy's got some problems, it's still neat to look at those little details and go, oh, yeah, that continued over to 89, it continued over to these comics and that animated series or whatever. So it's just a really neat experience. But then again, I mentioned this figure's got some issues, so let's just run through those really quickly. First issue, the neck is very primitive and very fragile. It is one piece attached to a ball joint, so when you turn his head, you feel like this tension, like you can see it kind of wants to bounce back. I have seen a lot of reviews online where heads have popped off, arms have broken off, so this is a figure that has been very fragile. It kind of reminds me of the old NECA figures that just fall apart. More on that later. And second thing, this figure, oops, almost knocked down our number 6 entry, but he is done in an interesting matte gray, which looks great. However, it lends to the stiffness in all the joints. You could definitely hear that. And because of that, I think that's what causes a lot of these joints to pop off. So it's a figure that you want to handle very delicately. And that being said, I think my third critique about this figure is he is definitely way too tall. I won't compare him with anyone right now, but he is a very big figure. I believe this base body has been used previously. I don't remember on who. It's very similar to the Hush Batman, so a little bit too tall, but both aesthetically great figures, so that's interesting. I don't have the Hush Batman, so I can't bring him in to do a little comparison or anything, but yeah, that being said, I still think he's a great figure, and hey, I think he's the very first McFarlane figure that we reviewed that has a wired cape, which is a huge bonus. I didn't do any mods with this guy, by the way. I love him a lot as is, although I might be tempted to do a little bit of a height mod so you can match up with my Golden Age superheroes a little bit better. Off to my number 7 entry, and I am absolutely cheating here. This is the Batman vs. Superman Batman, Batfleck, if you will, but highly modified to resemble as he looked on a con-exclusive figure, I believe, that was simply called the Joker's Wild. It was a very big, minimally articulated statue that was done up in white, and he's got all this Jared Leto Joker graffiti all over him. It was just a design that always stuck out to me for whatever reason. Like, I remember when I was still collecting Lego a little bit for a brief wink there. They were doing a lot of bootlegs and stuff like that. I remember they bootlegged this particular design as a Lego minifigure, so it's just a design that's always stuck with me. I guess it's the first time I've seen, like, a Jokerized Batman. Of course, now when we say a Jokerized Batman, it doesn't mean much, because McFarlane just does that every single time a blue moon comes over the sky, but it's just old hat now. We expect Jokerized Batman, but this is the first time I've ever seen that concept. Rather, the statue was. So I wanted to go ahead and just turn it into an articulated 7-inch counterpart. And we did do a short on that. We did a lightning mod video on that if you want to check that out and learn a little bit more about the process. So I'll be brief here. But yeah, the reason why he's on this list at all is simply because he is very nostalgic to me. I more associate this figure with the initial Suicide Squad movie, which is a crap movie, I know, but just 2016, it was an interesting time. It was the first time we were getting a flat-out supervillain movie, if you will, so to me that was very special. And this design I associated more with Suicide Squad than I did with BVS. That being said, this design and all the merchandising really did have an impact on me, and I wanted to see this design in a modern toy form. So here we are. I did the J up front, did all the ha-ha-ha's, which was an absolute pain. I based him out in white with a spray paint to make him look good. And hey, I even gave him a custom cape, which is true to the original statue that has the big old smile on it. So that was really fun to do as well. I also got a little bit creative. I gave him some batarangs and also some alternate fisted hands. So I can go either way on that. So just a ton of fun. I'm not sure if the original statue was meant to be like a statue that would have been vandalized by the Joker in Gotham, or if it was like an alternate Batman suit that he screwed up. I don't know what the lore was, but it was simply no, it wasn't a con exclusive. Excuse me there. It was an Entertainment Earth exclusive, so sorry about that. But again, this is informal, not meant to be perfect. But that being said, I don't totally know what the aim of their game was. I think it was just meant to be a unique design to sell a super special exclusive. The original statue is out there, but the prices do vary. They're kind of everywhere, so if you're interested in that statue, go for it, have fun. But if you want to make a custom, I mean, this guy was pretty easy to do. Just slap him up with white, get rid of the black cape, and then get a white substitute, and just tag him up. There's not a whole lot of paint you need to add after the white. So, yeah, pretty fun to do. Just a cheap little custom I wanted to do, especially since I accidentally got a second BVS Batman off Amazon when I tried to cancel it after I already found it in the wild. But that being said, it's just a nostalgic little design for me. So I enjoy him a fair bit. Let me know what you think. Here we are in our 7th spot with Battison from The Batman, and this is more specifically the version released in the 6-pack with all, well, quote-unquote, all 6 cinematic Batman that we've seen over the years, from the initial quadrilogy all the way up to the DCEU, which is now defunct, of course. Oh no, that's a lie. Then it extended, of course, over here to the Matt Reeves Batman, which is one of my personal favorite interpretations. I don't play with this figure a whole ton, but I really like displaying him just stoic, kind of just standing there, brooding. I mean, it's kind of what he did in the movie. Not a very action-packed movie, but I don't think it really needed to be. I mean, when the action did come along, it was totally awesome, but it was the first time that I saw a Batman movie that was a little bit more slow-paced, and I seriously enjoyed it. Like, for those of you who have been part of this channel before, I'm not a Christopher Nolan fan. Simply on the fact that I just don't like his directing style, so The Dark Knight isn't quite my cup of tea, so you won't be seeing Christian Bale on this list. So this is the first time where we had the detective Batman, and I was really able to get on board with that concept. So for me, this isn't the Batman that would be doing a whole lot of action stuff, but he does a really good job just kind of holding his own. And he is leagues better than the initial one that we got. Granted, not perfect. I did have to do some mods here and there, but I think the biggest improvement was certainly the face. It definitely looks a lot more like Edward under there, I suppose. And then you got a lot more weathering. Well, not a lot more. It's very subtle. You got some weathering down here on the armor. I didn't do anything there. Although I did do a little bit of repainting, like here on some buttons, on some clips. This little grenade or EMP, I don't know what that is over there. Of course, I got him a pleather cape, which is wired, although you don't need a whole ton of wiring for this particular guy. Again, he's not doing a whole lot of acrobatic Schumacher backflips or anything like that, so he doesn't need to be doing a whole ton of jumping or anything of that nature. And I also did manage to find a 3D printed holster for his grapnel gun. Of course, as we know from the six-pack, none of the Batmen came with any accessories aside from the bat signal, but I did recycle this from the initial release of Pattinson. So I took the grapnel gun, brought it over here, and actually plucked the 3D printed holster off the initial release, and then I dropped it onto here instead. And I actually had to paint in the belts over here as well. So, not a perfect figure when you initially get him, but do a little bit of modding, give him a little bit of loving, and he comes out pretty damn good. And you can also interchange the hands that came with the initial release with this guy over here, and then you have a pretty solid Pattinson. Honestly, not a whole lot else to say here, just a great figure. I seriously enjoy him. Now that takes us to our number 6 spot, which is kind of controversial. I don't think everyone is head over heels for this figure, but for me, it just hits this really nice itch that I really love. As I mentioned before, I really love the blue on gray style Batman. You've seen that before with the initial Nightfall release, but here we have another Nightfall variant, which came with the Batman and Bane 2-pack, which we have reviewed, so if you want more details about this figure, you can check that video out. The reason why I say this figure is a little bit controversial, at least in my eyes, is the wired cape. Again, I love wired capes, but this is one that wasn't executed perfectly. It looks great. I think it's beautiful. I love the color choice. I think the shininess is a lot of fun, even if it might not be the most accurate thing, but it is definitely way too long, and it's very stiff. It's not quite as silky as it should be, because it's got the black trim on the inside. So, but all that being said, it makes him feel very comic booky. It makes it feel like he stepped right out of the pages from when the bat was broken. And I really do fancy this idea of a Batman that's been beat to hell, he's on his last legs, and he's trying to make a final confrontation with Bane, unsuccessfully, of course. And I think this is just a really great way to capture a critical moment within the Batman mythos. And it's just excellent. As for the rest of the figure itself, another reason why that not everybody loves this figure is he is cel-shaded, and that is a very aesthetically compromising choice. You're either going to love that, or you're going to hate that, or it might just turn you off completely. For me, I think it's interesting. It just adds a little bit of extra flavor in comparison to all the live-action Batman that we've seen, the other comic-style figures that we've seen. But this one goes a little bit deeper into stylization. It's a little bit romanticized, if you will. Like, you got cel shading here in the eyes, along the edges of the mouth, certainly here in the bodysuit itself. And actually, one compromise I thought is if you look at the cel shading in the main suit, you can actually think of that as sweat or something like that. Like, this is a Batman that's all beat up. He's getting really tired. He's getting all sweaty and stuff. One thing I could ask for is maybe a little bit of blood. Like, you got some here in the mouth. It would have been nice to see it here in the tears. This is certainly a figure that I am considering customizing. I haven't done that yet. This is still totally vanilla. I haven't changed a damn thing on this figure, but another great thing about it is he came with a ton of hands, which is fantastic. You don't always see that with certain Batman releases. We're seeing it more now. I think as many times as I've complained about Todd McFarlane figures in the past, I think he's really improving. He's really adding more bang for your buck with certain figures, especially the Batman figures. So I do think the figure line is learning slowly, and this is a good example of that. Not a perfect figure. I think the cape compromises him a little bit, and the cel shading might throw some people off, but if you like the cel shading and you don't mind the cape, this is kind of a perfect Nightfall Batman, at least if you prefer the battle damage version, which I do. Now we make a return to the movies with our number 5 entry being, again, an entry from the Batman Heralded 6-pack, and this time we've got George Clooney as Batman from Batman and Robin. Certainly the most hated interpretation of Batman ever, but I've always had a soft spot for George Clooney, I'll be honest with you. Not a perfect performance, of course, but I've beat a dead horse millions of times about why I absolutely love Batman and Robin, unironically, mind you. But the reason why I love this iteration of the character so much is, like, he's a veteran Batman. He's kind of bored at this point, so that's why he's a little bit deadpan, you know? And for me, that kind of worked. But anyways, enough about George Clooney. If you want to learn more about why I love his portrayal and the movie itself, I did a whole podcast. I did a few little shorts in the past, so you can check those out. So today, though, we're talking about the figure, and he's very well executed. The only thing that I did not like, aside from the fact that he doesn't have accessories, but again, that could be said about everyone in that 6-pack, is the fact that he had very cheeseclothy, unwired cape. I didn't like it all, so obviously I got a substitute off of eBay, and it's still not a perfect cape. I don't think it's a fault of the cape, it's more a fault of the inherent design of this Panther suit. This is the second Panther suit that we've seen in the Schumacher movies, but the cape needs to peel forward to these two little back clips off to the side of the cowl and then branch out. As a result of that, it pulls up the corners of the cape, which bothers me a little bit, but it's not the worst thing. I mean, you can still stretch it out. And again, do the Keaton, as I mentioned before, and he looks pretty okay. It's not the strongest wire ever, but it gives him that nice shiny look on the back. So I had a customizer do that because I don't have the materials to make a shiny cape myself, although I might go out of my way one day, just get a big old length of that cloth, and then just crank out a whole bunch of capes for the other Batman that I have in my collection who are not on this list. That being said, love or hate Batman and Robin, this is a very good execution of the Batman suit that we saw in the film. Of course, that we haven't seen the ice variant in plastic form yet, which would be pretty cool to see, along with the Panther suit from Forever, but I mean, they got all the details down there. As I mentioned previously in the podcast and in my shorts, this design, the Panther suits rather, are meant to embody Greek gods, and I got a whole philosophy on why that actually works here, but that's why we have bat nipples, that's why we have the high-definition abs and everything here, the musculature and all that. And that being said, it continues with that Schumacher aesthetic. You got another bat logo over here on the belt. You got more bat logos down here on the shins, and no bat logos on the arms. So he calmed down a little bit here with this design. But once again, no matter how you feel about Clooney, this is an excellent portrayal of that figure in plastic form. He moves very well. You can use some accessories, but if you got the 4-pack version to build Mr. Freeze, then you could do some hand swaps and figure it out there. Then again, no, I'm wrong. The Mr. Freeze wave came with freeze effects that you could put on the arms, which I don't really love. But if you get the Batman Forever wave, you could do some hand mods, as I talked about before, and then you can remove the hands, like so, and then shave down the mushroom peg a little bit, and then you can do a few swaps that way. So, you can get him holding accessories if you wish, so that's something I might do when I reshelve him after this review. But all that being said, here he is at number 5. He's just a great damn figure, and I'm a sucker for George Clooney. I feel no shame in admitting that. Here we are at number 4, again continuing with that infamous Batman 6-pack. This time we actually have Val Kilmer from Batman Forever. And of course this figure has been released twice, like Clooney, because they got their own respective waves of Build-A-Figures. This was the Build-A-Nightmare Bat version. Well, that was the other one that we got. This is the first release we got that is done totally in blue. As for the other one that we saw, it was a really mixed bag. If you saw that review where he had a black cowl and gloves, I think the Speedo as well, and then boots, and that totally clashed with the accuracy to the film. The more accurate version is the one that we got here in the 6-pack, which I love a lot more. And if you saw my top 10 figures of 2023, he did show up on that list. I loved him that much. And even though I actually prefer George Clooney over Val Kilmer as Batman, I know it's a controversial statement, I don't feel like defending myself right now, but I do think this is a better and more interesting toy. Just because he got that metallic blue going throughout, just really, this feels the most Schumacher of all the Schumacher figures that we've gotten thus far in McFarlane, easily. And this is more specifically the Sonar suit. Hopefully they do a Panther suit variant as well in the future. It'll probably be like a Chase variant or something like that, which would suck, but I definitely do prefer the Sonar suit personally. And again, the reason why I say this is the most Schumacher design we've seen in the line thus far is because you got like a trillion bat logos. You got one across the pecs here, you got one at the belt, you got one at the knees. Actually not on the knees this time around, so I stand corrected. But again, you got more of that Greek god stuff. You got like the musculature popping out, and then you got a little 6-pack and everything here. It's just a really crazy and loud design. And that's kind of why I love it so much. I also really adore the vented ears. Gave him a custom cape. It's literally the same cape that I gave to Clooney. I tried finding a nice blue one. I really couldn't, but that's okay. This is a good enough version. And I did do the same hand mod as I mentioned before, so he could be compatible with the 4-pack version that we got. Not 4-pack, that's an accurate statement, but the Build-A-Wave version of him. So you could take the hands from that version and do a little repaint and port it onto here. And now we can have him with the sonar batarang, or whatever you want to call it. I think the one other thing that I could ask for from this figure is an alternate head where he's got those glowing emissive eyes. I think that would be great. But then again, if you have the 6-pack version and the Build a Nightmare Bat version, you could pop off the head from the other release, do a repaint, and then you could just swap the heads at your leisure if you really wanted to. That's something I could do, but then I'd have no use for the rest of the other figure. So, then again, a lot of people turn that into the Panther suit, but personally, I don't think it's accurate enough. Sorry, I'm getting everything jumbled up. What I meant to say is we got that other release of Clooney, then you can jumble that up with the initial release of Kilmer, and then you could get a Kilmer Panther suit, but I don't think the parts are compatible enough for my taste, so I'm not going to do that. But I've seen a lot of people do it before very successfully, so if you want to do that, that's really cool. But for me, this is my preferred Kilmer. He looks fantastic, and also he's a Batman that I've come to appreciate a little bit more over the years. Here we are, finally at the top 3. Again, continuing with that 6-pack of Batman that we discussed before. This is the last entry from that pack. I don't really care for the 2 others as much. But here we have, of course, everyone's favorite Michael Keaton Batman. But the only reason why I love this figure is because I modded him. Base figure, not that great. The head was oversized. Again, he had that cheeseclothy cape, which I didn't love at all. And also the logo wasn't totally accurate. It didn't have the black rim going around it, so I had to paint that in. I actually think I drew it in with a marker, but that being said, now that I've modded him, I love him a lot more. What mods did I do? Let's talk about it. So let's push on in here, as we've been doing throughout this little list that we've got going on. First thing, I actually imported this really beautiful head sculpt from overseas. Not only does it look leagues better than the initial head sculpt, which I have misplaced. I don't know where it is. But you can also switch out the faces, which is really awesome. And he does have 2 alternate portraits. I don't have them on hand right now, but there's one that has a little bit more of a frown. They have one that has a tad more of a smirk, so I really enjoy that a ton. It's a really great head sculpt. It can go with the Batman Returns Batman as well, assuming they ever make one, or if you made a custom one. You can also port it onto the Flash variant. It's just a really great head sculpt. If you really want to get it, it is pricey, but I do have it linked in a mod showcase where I reviewed this dude. I think it was also the initial Nightfall Batman that we got, and the Pattinson that we just looked at previously on this list. So if you want to pick up a head like that, then you can totally do that. And then as for the cape, this is also a custom good that I ordered elsewhere on eBay. That was extremely difficult to get on, and that is because the cowl is glued down to the rest of the body. So I actually had to heat this dude up, sever the neck, peel the cowl up, slide in the cape, and glue everything back down. So it was a very difficult thing to do. But now that I've done that, the cape is so much better for this iteration of Batman, because whenever you think of Keaton Batman, the cape is supposed to be draped over the shoulders like this. And you couldn't do that at all with the cape that we got on the stock figure. But now we can, which is fantastic. And can Keaton do a Keaton? Of course he can. And he can just totally branch out his arms, and it looks fantastic. And by the way, I also did do the hand mod, so he has interchangeable hands. I just don't have hands that are compatible with him yet. So hopefully, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to do it based on their track record thus far. They're going to probably do a Batman Returns Build-A-Figure wave. I don't know what the Build-A-Figure is going to be, but I imagine they'll release a Batman Returns Keaton, which is different from this 89 iteration, and he'll come with alternate hands and batarangs and whatnot that you can then give to this 89 Batman. So that would be great. But in anticipation for that, the hands are prepared to be popped off and whatever. And yeah, so great figure, and I think one of the reasons why I enjoy him so much is the future potential he can hold with any future releases of Keaton that we get. I think this is a perfect Keaton Batman for my shelf. I think the only thing that would make him better is if this belt was done in a straight yellow, but in my experience, painting with yellow, it's one of the most difficult colors to apply onto a figure. So any suggestions for a paint, let me know in the comments. That's something I could do one day. Or if not, I'll just do a part swap with the Batman that we get in the future. I'll figure that out on my own. Taking the silver, in second place, we have the recently released and recently reviewed Adam West 66 Batman from the TV show and its own movie counterpart. So this figure has been highly modified since the last time we talked about it, so let's talk about it now. Firstly, I gave him a modded cape, as I tend to do. We discussed that before. I tried trimming up the cape that we had initially, but I wound up totally butchering it, so I just took it off and made a substitute, and I felt like it was too short, so what I did is I actually rested it a little bit back towards the neck. I created this little piece of cloth right here to sort of imply that it's being clipped together at the front of the neck, and that actually helped to lower the cape a little bit, so it just scrapes by the knees, which is pretty much where it should be. And since the last time we had a look at this figure, I actually gave him a total repaint, at least on the blues. So I did a mix between a dark blue and a glittery type of blue to make him look a little bit more shiny. One thing that I noticed is that the blue that he had before, it was borderline teal. It wasn't quite there. So I went ahead and I repainted everything to match with the custom cape that I have, and now he's basically perfect, at least in my eyes. I mean, he isn't objectively perfect. I mean, there are a few little weird things going on with the wired cape, like here it was initially glued to down here on that piece of the clothy looking cowl, so it's a little bit bunched up by the glue. But that being said, it could still do a Keaton and branch it out, which I really love, so that's fantastic. And then I also repainted all the different hands, so you got, I initially called this his forced choke hand, but it's meant to be his thinking hand, doing his detective work, thinking through all the Joker's gags and all that, so that's really nice to have. I repainted all his other accessories, so I also did the Batarang in the same color, which is indeed supposed to be a little bit more shiny, and yeah, I really love the almost borderline glittery metallic look that I did on this figure. I hope that I could translate that over to other figures that I have. Like, I think the Batman Forever Robin definitely needs a better repaint. I repainted him already. I feel like I could do a better job now that I could see what I did with this dude over here. But that being said, the base figure does not suck. I mean, I modded him just based on personal preferences, but the original cape, very cool, even though it's too long and probably isn't quite the right color. The base color of the blue, it's not bad. I mean, it just needed a little bit more oomph to scream a little bit more Adam West, and I feel like now we finally got that. And beyond that, I think he's an excellent McFarlane release. Came with a really good amount of accessories for a standard release figure. He's not platinum chased, he's not page punchers or anything like that. So he was priced well. It's just a matter if you can find him. But I'm noticing that McFarlane figures have become a little bit easier to stumble upon lately. There's not as much of a hunt anymore, so I'm appreciating that. I don't know how it works behind the scenes, like if there's some sort of algorithm going on of like, oh, you should send more figures to Target, we should send more figures to Walmart or whatever like that. But I'm just noticing that figures like Adam West are more available, so don't feel the need to shell out scalper prices anymore. I feel like, at least with the standard figures like Adam West, you can find them a little easier. I actually did see the black and white variant recently, yesterday even, but I didn't want them, so I didn't pick them up. But if you just want the classic Batman Adam West, here, we got him here. This makes me actually want the two previous Batman that we've seen in the past. Like, there was Lowry, and I forget the other one. I haven't seen either of those serials, but those would be really cool. Now I finally round up our cinematic Batman collection, right? So, yeah, here's hoping that we get, Award Robin. That would be really cool. And then the rest of the Rogues Gallery, like, get the Joker, get the Riddler, Catwoman especially. That's one of my favorite iterations of Catwoman. But, yeah, let's see more Batman 66. I think everyone wants it. All right. We looked at a lot of Batman today, but here we are at number 1. So we went through a lot of versions of this iconic character who recently got a star on the Ground of Fame, Hall of Fame. I forget what it's called. It doesn't matter. But just the fact that he had that achievement really speaks to the legacy and longevity of this character. So that being said, we looked at comic iterations of him, cartoon iterations, cinematic iterations, and all that. So what is my favorite Batman figure? Apparently, it's not McFarlane at all. It came before the McFarlane figures even started, at least for DC. So here we have the NECA I believe New York Comic-Con exclusive Batman versus Aliens Batman. This is my favorite Batman, period, in any scale, from any IP. This is just my favorite look for him because it takes everything that I love about Batman and puts it into this one simple design. That being said, I have a lot of personal attachment to this figure because of how much freaking trouble he cost me over the years. We've brought him in for size comparisons before. We talked about him a little bit off to the side, but I never really gave him a moment to just discuss my story with him. So basically, when I first got my full-time job, that gave me the ability to go after these very hard-to-get NECA Dark Horse DC figures, and this is one of the ones I really wanted to get. He also came with the Jokerized Alien, which is totally wild. And when I got this figure, he had some QC issues. There were stiff joints, and in fact, the leg was popping out. Well, the entire leg rig. So if we actually take this guy off the stand, I spread the legs apart. Don't get too excited. You will see that there's a little slit here in the underwear, right? That's because this whole leg rig kept slipping through. That was totally parted. So I actually had to go in with a Dremel. You can't see it, but I poked in some holes in the crotch right here. I know that's horrifying to say, but I put in a little piece of a Bandai sprue, glued it in. Then I glued the pants together with the legs in there, and I actually managed to save this figure and his articulation. Granted, the articulation isn't awesome, but it's in there. Like, you can still kick up and everything. Like, you could see, you move one leg, the other leg moves with it. It's just a very primitive NECA figure, so it's very awkward. So that's the first thing about this figure. The second thing is my story with the cape. This is not the original cape. We've talked about that before in one of our shorts previously in a lightning mod. This was made from a shirt that I got at Savers. As for the original one, it was, again, very cheeseclothy, not wired or anything. Very wrinkly, too. It was not a very good cape. It was beat to hell the more I worked with it. I tried giving it wiring with stitch work at first. That didn't quite work out because my stitch work is terrible. I will never do that again. Then I tried it out with glue, and that made it look even worse. I tried coloring in the glue residue with marker and stuff like that. And by the time I already learned how to do the tape mod, again, tutorial on that on my channel, the cape was already too ruined. So ultimately, I opted to go with my more modern method and just start from scratch and make him a brand new cape. I ran around Savers for like an hour trying to find the perfect shirt to cut up. And lo and behold, I found one that matched the color almost exactly. And it wires up beautifully. And yes, he could do a Keaton, which is fantastic. And I even managed to cut in the frilling, or whatever you want to call it, at the bottom, and it looks really fantastic. So yeah, you could do the spread out wing design. Again, it feels very Arkham Knight to me, which I really love. A game that I really enjoy, obviously. And the last mod that I've made with this figure, and probably the last one I'll ever do with this figure, because he's basically perfect in my eyes, is I managed to give him alternate hands. These are not the hands that came with this figure. Of all things, this came with the NECA It Pennywise figure, the Tim Curry one, but they are absolutely compatible with this particular Batman. The pegs are a little smaller, but they do pop in a lot better. So what I did is I shaved down the little grooves that are on top of the gloves so they're no longer there, and I repainted them. The color's not a perfect match, but it's close enough. And yeah, you can pop them in, no problem. So I took my favorite Batman figure, and I made him a little bit better. So that is really awesome. I can show you some other hands that I have over here. So release them down, put them back. The joints are not the tightest, but that's okay. That's why I give him a figure stand all the time. But as for his default hands, the original hands that he came with, he has a Batarang holding hand with a removable Batarang, but I keep it in there because it's such a small piece, and I do not want to lose that to the Carpet Monster. He also have two fists, and that's it. That's all he came with. But now that I have the Pennywise figures, I got a pointing hand for when he's doing his detective work or whatever you want, and I even have a gripping hand over here. And again, thinking more about Arkham Knight, you can get him suited up with a baseball bat, which is freaking awesome. So I could totally do that. And that is accurate to the Batman versus Alien versus Predator comics. He did wield a bat at one point, so I think that's a ton of fun. And I also made this initially for Lex Luthor, who I recently taken apart for my Cyborg Superman, but I had left behind this custom Kryptonite Spear. So if he's fighting up against my NECA Superman, then this would be the perfect weapon for him, and that fits in his hand as well. So this is just an awesome figure. Oh, last detail, totally forgot to mention this. I also gave him glow-in-the-dark eyes. So that being said, here's the black light. And you should be able to see the eyes peering back at you in the night. Like, that's the last thing you see before you're knocked out, that you wake up and you're in Arkham Asylum. I love that. That's one of my favorite mods I've ever done to a figure. The paint I used was called Space Beams. It's very cool, and I think it's pretty easy to get. It's on Amazon, but you want to apply it to small details. You wouldn't want to do it to big, lavish surfaces. So if you just do it to the eyes, like, I think you could do that to an Arkham Batman easily. It looks really good. So, yeah, for me, this is a perfect Batman. Feels very Keaton, feels very cinematic, but also feels very comic booky. On top of that, he feels very much like he jumped right out of the Arkham games, and also he fought the damn Xenomorphs and Predators. So, and he also reminds me a lot of that. I'm not sure if anyone remembers this. You can find it if you want. It's on YouTube. The Batman Dead End fan film. It's like 10 minutes long, where he fought a Xenomorph and the Joker briefly, and then also a gang of Predators. So that's a really cool thing to watch if you want to check that out. But yeah, it's not only everything I love in a Batman, but it ties in everything that I also love with, like, sci-fi, with Predator and Aliens. So it's just a really cool combination of things. And no matter where I want to put him in my collection, he works. He sells it. Like, especially if I wanted to put him in an Arkham situation, I get this other hand, and then I can give the Batman friggin' bat. He looks really cool. And then on top of that, you get the glowing eyes. He's just an awesome goddamn figure. So I could keep going about him, but if you want more details on how I made this figure come to be, you can ask me in the comments. I will try to help you out as best I can. That is if you can find a copy of this figure, because he's very rare. I think I also heard that he was bootlegged, so do be careful of that. But if you can get a hold of him, he is really awesome. But do be aware of the QC issues that come with the earlier NECA figures. Like I always say, if you're ever interested in a slightly older NECA figure, ask the seller, how's the QC, how's the articulation. I actually recommend getting NECA figures that are loose, so you can ask the seller about the quality of the figure, so you can be sure that they're okay. I got this guy mint out of the box, that's why I had to do the crotch repair, so that was really interesting. With all that being said, I'm not going to do a whole new setup here, but that is it for my top 10 Batman of all time. I hope you enjoyed this little list, and if you have any questions about how I modded these figures, please feel free to let me know. This was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a few things along the way. So, that being said, that's going to wrap up this list. If you enjoyed them, please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
ring the bell to be notified of our latest arrivals, and subscribe.
Yeah, hi, Mechabug here. If you want to see more from Pod Guy, then please be sure to check out the Pod Plays channel down in the description for some Let's Plays. And if you want to support the channel a bit too, you also got the Pod Patreon, which is down in the description as well. See you around, folks!
Thank you guys very much for watching. Rock on, and I will see you all later.